It is, wow, it's Thursday, May 21st, 2020. I'm here with someone who represents an organization I think is really doing interesting work in the art space in Atlanta, and someone who represents an organization that, like many in Atlanta, are making adjustments due to COVID-19. So I'm here talking to Anne Archer Dennington of Flux Projects here in Atlanta. They are actually in their 10th anniversary this year right now, but they are an arts organization that does a lot of great and really interesting and innovative pieces to sponsoring artists and things like that. So we're going to be talking to Anne today about what they're doing, and then just more about the organization as a whole. So thank you, Anne, for joining me
Thank you,
today.
King. Thankful. Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving Flux Projects a little bit of time on your platform. We're honored to be here.
Well, no, thank you. And so I got to ask, what is Flux Projects for people who don't know?
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit arts organization, and we produce temporary public art projects that connect and grow artists and audiences in Atlanta through the creative power of place. So, public art projects are the core of our mission, and then we do a slate of programming that help connect those further to our audience.
Okay. And what are some of the projects people may know you guys from?
Yeah, so I think many people remember when Flux was a one night event, started out in
Yeah.
Castleberry, Flux Night,
Yeah.
and we still do a fall event that brings together multiple projects to explore a site over a couple of days. But I'd say over the years, we have worked with artists from across disciplines. So people may remember Nick Cave, who worked with Atlanta choreographer T. Lang, and we in Pont City Market even before the property opened. The ladders that we presented in Freedom Park, on the Hill, Rise Up Atlanta. So let's see, other things that we have done. We've done a number of projects in the Old Fourth Ward. We did something in Freedom Parkway with yard signs where people could write what they were looking freedom of or freedom from.
Mhm.
And leading up to the last presidential election, it was a way of hopefully to spur citizen participation and voting. So it's really been a range from visual artists to performing artists, um, to kind of a little bit of anything in between, sort of projects that people just showed up and experienced, to projects that really required audience engagement.
And to that's a good way of saying it, but I'm gonna have to add on to that. You guys do some really out the box avant-garde projects, and
Okay.
I like it because when any Flux project happens, I kind of don't know what the next one's gonna be. So there's always a bit of just kind of general like interest in what you guys can be doing. It's never the same thing twice. So
Well, thank you. Thank you. We have always thought of our work as bringing surprise and thoughtful consideration of public space and helping people see places they know differently. So we've looked for locations over time that had an audience and wanting people to realize the difference that placing art in those locations can make. So believing that um, there is something of a shadow. Once something has been there, there is a remnant or a film, and that you never look at that space the same way again, and that you begin to understand the impact that art can have. And so I would say that, also when you talk about the difference in some of our works over time, we've put a great value in bringing people together collectively in public space, believing that shared experiences in public space help give a place meaning. And while we've also, believe that you can experience any of our work individually or communally, there is definitely something about the communal experience. And that once you take a place and you put art into that equation, it sort of disrupts the way we think about that location every day. And it helps bring down barriers between people, helps us maybe bridge some of our differences, consider each other, our location, that site, our history differently.
right. And one of the things I've been noticing for a lot of people within the arts community is that we're going to say pre-COVID, that there has been this need for the last years of really just reinvesting with local talent. And in the history of Atlanta, that really is rare, just to see so much more reinvestment supporting local artists in particular. Why do you think Flux has been such a good balance of the managing of local and kind of like national or international like artists?
So I think that goes to, we have always tried to serve artists, our audience, and the city of Atlanta. You know, our three founding goals
Yeah,
were to bring opportunities to our artists, broaden the audience for the arts, and make the city a more creative place to be. And so we've tried to be responsive to those three areas along the way. But and we always had a real range from artists that were doing their first work in the public realm up to, you know, nationally and internationally celebrated artists like Nick Cave. But in 2016 and 17, as we, you know, are always in conversation with artists about what they need, what we began to realize is that um, artists in Atlanta, well, we always knew they lacked resources. You know, like an artist working here, artists in Atlanta they can make more things happen with less resources. They are so resourceful and so
right.
committed to the work. But what we began to notice is that there were a lot of opportunities for young and emerging artists, but that once an artist sort of got to where we're going to call mid-career on a national stage, you know, they had exhausted some of those initial entry-level resources, there weren't a lot of opportunities for them to continue to grow their practice.
Mm,
So we found that we had artists who either just weren't progressing or they were not working here. So we had artists that we loved and everyone here thought of, oh, there are these amazing Atlanta resource, but they were only working in other cities where there were the funds to make that happen. And so we made a conscious decision then to try to always be working with sort of a mid-tier Atlanta artist to help them push their practice. And it just, it kind of piggybacked on things that we had been, you know, a mindset we'd had all along, and maybe just making it more intentional, was that we wanted to always give artists the opportunity to expand their work and to take risk. And we'd embraced Atlanta. Atlanta's position is not being centered to the art world, you know, not being in
yeah,
New York, and tried to say to artists from here or elsewhere, you know, come here, try something new, be, you know, be exploratory. And we wanted to cultivate Atlanta as a city for risk taking because we felt like that was in line with our artists and it gave us a real niche place to operate. But we wanted then to really offer that in a mindful way to artists here. And I would say with that in mind, George Long is one of the, he did a
yeah,
project called Sorts beside Adarm, and that was the first one that was very intentional. And we expanded with that. And so with that, we had his project. We had a film about his project. It was documented with photographs. There were performances around it. And it was the first project for which we commissioned a critical essay.
nice.
And so it was just trying to give artists as much resources and as much support going forward. So next up, as you may be thinking of, is Charmaine Manyfield's
Yeah,
Remembrance as Resistance, Preserving Black Narratives, which
right.
was scheduled for Juneteenth this year in
Yeah,
historic Oakland Cemetery. I am sad to say it is going to be now in 2021.
understood,
Um,
understood.
but we are going to be bringing out virtual programming on Juneteenth and still mark this very important day in history and point in Charmaine's career.
Well, you kind of jumped to it. I was just going to ask
Sorry.
you. Wait, no, 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 no. That's great. I like that. I was going to ask you, two things actually hit kind of both, which was one, what have you guys done with the programming of this year? For there's some things I know you can't physically do. So, what
Mhm.
programs and changes have you made for this year so far?
Yeah, so when COVID-19 began restricting our ability to meet in physical public space, um, we didn't have our next project planned until June, but we knew that we needed to do something immediately. Our history, we came out of the recession. So in 2009, our founder, Louis Corrigan, wanted to do something to support artists and keep them working during the recession. which, you know, another dire financial time, but doesn't seem like anything compared to now. But that's when Flux was started, the first Flux night in Castleberry. So on, I think Atlanta started shutting down on like March 12th, 13th. On April 2nd, we launched our virtual art series,
Hmm.
which recognizing that shared space at this moment is virtual space. But we wanted to keep it kind of in line with our mission. It had to still feel like Flux Projects. So those, we planned it as a 6-week series because we thought naively that that would get us beyond the crisis. It
Yeah.
didn't, and we're going to continue. But so it was commissioning artists to do new work. It was on a virtual platform, but it was treating those like projects. So each project was announced weekly with an email that included the project, the artist bio, an artist statement, and a way for individuals to support that artist. And those projects will live forever on our website as a project. But we were mindful to work with artists from a diversity of disciplines. And so if you look at it, you can see we have a filmmaker, a writer, a musician, a group that does immersive works, a dance theater. We wanted to represent very quickly that that this new realm could be applicable to artists working in any medium.
Right. And one thing
But
I
it
want
was
to ask
critical to
about.
us too that, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but it was also critical to us that it be a source of revenue, so that
Mhm.
we were paying artists to do it, and that it would be new work that was kind of. And I think that artists said over time. I mean, artists are always creative and spark to create in strange times. But we wanted to kind of, I guess, foster that along, give it a platform for what they were doing.
Right. And no, I was just going to ask that. I've talked to a few arts organizations now, and some of them versus others are just having sometimes just a hard time of even coordinating that. Like, how do you guys even coordinate something like that that's going to be virtual with a bunch of different artists and a bunch of different disciplines and sometimes different locations?
I think it's what we do. We're a
Okay.
small, nimble organization. If you work in the public realm, you are used to working in uncertainties. So I started in the art world, in the gallery world, went to the nonprofit world. I worked in the museum world. And, if you're in a space, you set an exhibition and
Yeah.
you put it together, and that it's, you're going to have a opportunity to see it before it's open to the public. But if you're working in public art, you're going to see it for the first time when the public sees it for the first time.
Yeah.
And you're always going to have to contend with weather and shifting things about the location. And I think that, no one's comfortable in this situation, but for an organization like Flux Projects, maybe we had a little more comfortability than others. And I think just also, just, you know, arts organizations in Atlanta, like artists, I think are very resourceful and determined. And it was just a determination, not only from us, but from our peer organizations, just to keep things moving.
And I want to ask in particular is that it seems like over the last decade or so, Atlanta finally turned a corner with real acceptance towards public art.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, obviously, has had a lot to do with that. But what do you think it's been just getting the public to kind of accept public art as a whole as something that's really meaningful and something of value?
Um, I think that when um, our work was fun and accessible. And I would say that we met the public where it was. I think that, when we started Flux Projects, we were aware that, excuse me, the audience in Atlanta was often way too small. And that too often us as arts organizations had created maybe an elitist position with it and not made it accessible. And so we met our audience where they were. We believe that anyone can can intuit and understand art in all of its forms. So we never differentiated, here's art for children and here's arts for adults. We've just done our projects and found audience among people of all ages. And we made it fun. And in the early days in Flux Night, it was really very much of a celebration, and we were mindful. We were pulling people together to celebrate that yes, it was the recession, but the arts community was still here, and we were letting people experience public art in, in its greatest scope. So you might not like dance, but you might love a major, monumental projection project, or you might love quirky performances, or maybe you love sculpture. And I think that between all of the energy and all of the artists, and then it being on the street in Atlanta, that was another, I think, point of connection. People loved exploring our city, and it instilled a sense of pride and hope, not only for the arts community still being here, but hey, Atlanta can look this way. And I think just that continued over time. It's like, wow, this can happen in our city.
And I want to ask though, because since we are in the 10-year anniversary of Flux
Yeah.
Projects, what has been, I think, in you guys' opinion, like your greatest challenges and your greatest successes in the art space here in Atlanta?
Well, our greatest challenges at time have been weather.
Mm,
That's also, we have
obvious,
glorious weather in Atlanta, so that has also been a plus. Um, our greatest challenges, I think, with it, like any arts organization in Atlanta, has been funding. That at Georgia and Atlanta, it's not a place that has robust funding for the arts. That said, it has also been some of, our biggest gift. So we have had, the community as a whole has stepped up to support us. We have enjoyed grants. Lewis Corrigan, our founder, who started Flux Projects much like a startup, where he put in our seed money and really jump started us so that we were able to, from the beginning, to begin producing projects. But funding is always a challenge here. I think you were saying, like, what is our greatest resources? It's
yeah,
really the people here. It is the artists that are here, and it's the community of other arts organizations with whom we work, and our audience, because it is their gratitude that will always keep you going.
nice. And so on that end, I want to ask though, because your arts organization in Atlanta, and Atlanta really does have a lot of talent. What
Oh, tremendous.
Right. I was going to ask if you could change something. I'm going to ask the same question later a little differently,
Yeah.
but I'm going to ask it right now. If you
Okay.
could change something about the nature of funding art in Atlanta, what would it be?
Wow. We need a dedicated revenue stream for the arts in Atlanta.
Okay.
We don't have that. And in terms of public funding for the arts, we historically rank at the very bottom of the list of states.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing. I think there's also at times yeah, that would be the biggest thing.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that you were very direct about that. And
Yeah.
speaking of this issue of arts right now, which is obviously we're talking because of COVID-19, and we couldn't get a chance to necessarily talk in person about the 10th
Right.
anniversary. Right. And so I just want to ask in particular, has that affected Flux in any way outside of just staging events? Has that been something where you needed to necessarily furlough people, or you needed to just cancel projects altogether?
For us, no,
Okay.
but we are a very nimble, staff. I'm the only staff person, though we work very closely with Floyd Hall, who does communications with us. Rebecca
Yeah.
Kunchik is helping us with development. We've got this mighty team. Liz Lapidus, who's
Yeah.
working with us at PR, Gomez, who's doing design,
Mhm.
Ultramind with websites. So I feel like the most supported staff of one in the universe.
Right.
Um,
I really thought it was like maybe 8 or 9 of you guys, not one. And so,
No, it is, and then this unbelievable board of 9 people.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I never feel lonely in this job. Um, but we haven't. I mean, we are lucky. We are not furloughing anybody. We are not shifting any of our contracts, even though Charmaine's project will be postponed. We will pay all of our artists on time. Um, we in 2015 had our only project in 10 years to be postponed due to weather.
Mm.
And I think that was maybe a real growing experience, but it gave us, like, what do you do if something doesn't happen on time? And we're following that model.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we will launch an annual fund this year to help us with those resources. And I can say, as I said, with public funding, that is always a challenge here, but our arts organizations in Atlanta, our granting organizations, Georgia Council for the Arts, the Fulton County Arts Commission, City of Atlanta Office of Cultural Affairs have all stepped up to try to expedite funding, do new funding. Um, the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs right now, they did a new Power to Give campaign, which is letting arts organizations do an additional matching campaign this year, and it was just done to try to address this time.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so
so
I want to,
we're linking,
yeah,
we're linking resources.
no, I like
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that you know, can are we insulated totally from this? No, nobody is insulated totally from it. Um, am I able to say, with confidence right now that we are managing this and looking for next year and the next? Absolutely. But that means having a community be there with us, and we are excited about that. Um, yeah, does that
No, no, that definitely
kind of
helped.
cover? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, so because you're such a member of the arts community in Atlanta, what have you seen outside of Flux in the greater arts community right now in Atlanta?
I think that, there's so much going on right now that I've seen and loved. I'm amazed at how everyone has pivoted quickly and is offering
Yeah.
virtual programs. The arts leaders in Atlanta have really come together. I am on, several calls a week with them. We're looking at how we move forward collectively and support each other. And I think, just from those, um, like, scheduled things to just the emails and the quick texts that I get from people in the field, it's been great. But we're definitely looking, beginning to look at, the landscape's going to look different the rest of this year, next, and maybe even the next.
Right. And so with that said, which is going forward, so let's say realistically, let's say if everything's back to normal by September, what does that mean for Flux Projects?
Um, well, what with everything, I mean, if everything's back to normal by September, right now there are limits on permits and things like that. So
Mhm.
we're looking at, what comes next is going to depend on a couple of things. How the virus responds to the city opening up, how the city meets the mayor's 5 phases of reopening towards a new normal,
Yeah.
what is allowable in public space with permitting. Um, you know, our Flux night, where we're looking to gather a group of people to celebrate, there's no way it can look the same. But we are beginning to evaluate what we can do in place of that this year, and what we have the budget to put together. I mean, we're sort of weighing all of those things as we plan end of 2020, early 2021, and we're hoping that by summer of next year, at least in some way, we all feel comfortable coming back to public space. But right now we've been in the virtual realm, and I think you'll definitely begin to see our work match people's return to public space. And we want to be able to be there with them as they venture back to gathering.
Right. And I want to jump back for a second. Can you explain to people what Flux Night is? I think it's really interesting and people should know about.
Oh, so, um, well, Flux Night, I think, Flux Night brought together multiple projects for one celebratory evening. It started out in Grant Park, and at its, height, started out, sorry, in Castleberry, and at its height brought over 20,000 people together for one night. And it, we had to shift the platform over time. It moved to the Old Fourth Ward. It was in Grant Park in 2018, and in Pond City Market last year. And it was when people didn't know a lot about public art, I think bringing people together and saying, hey, you're going to be able to experience 12 or 20 public art projects got them to come versus one. It was like you said, we talked about like artists across all mediums.
Yeah.
But as it's progressed, it shifted. I think, you spoke about how our work was always changing and surprising and new, and to take a formula and go, we're going to do this same thing every year.
Yeah.
That didn't feel over time fresh and new and surprising.
Yeah.
And that wasn't us. So we knew we needed to mix it up. We needed to give more space. So it began being multiple projects over several days. We reduced the number of projects so that we could give artists more resources. So in 2018, it was in Grant Park. It was 4 artists. Between them, they activated 20 locations over 100 acres. I mean, it was very different. But where some Flux nights have been, wow, come into this celebration and been a big party. And people's response was, I can't believe this is Atlanta. This doesn't feel like Atlanta to me. When we were doing Grant Park, and it was the time, it was the mindset, it was the psychic culture of that time. We wanted people to step into Grant Park and be so present and take a deep breath and say, I've never felt more in Atlanta or more at home. And so that event is very much about bringing multiple projects together to explore a site, but it's going to be different every year. Right. In 2019, it was our first time where it was at Pond City Market. It was all projects focused on sound. And that was, if we looked at the history of our work, sound had been minimally represented. There were a handful of artists in Atlanta that were fluent and excelling in the medium. And so it was a risk, but we were like, okay, let's do one that's only about sound. And it was a learning experience for everybody. But as always, artists just amazed me with how they responded.
Right. But that's the thing I really enjoy about Flux is that you guys, well, I keep saying you guys, well, y'all are always just doing things that are always out the box in a way that I think other arts organizations, not just in Georgia or Atlanta, but really across the country could be taking note from, because it's always something that's new. It's always something that's innovative, but it always has a strong local component to it. And with that said, I want to ask you, is there any tips that you could give someone who may be thinking about what the next move is in the art space?
Arts organizations?
Oh yeah, arts organizations, I'm sorry.
I think that now is the time you go back to your mission and you look at what you were trying to do. Not like, here are our programs and here how we realize mission, but here's what we were trying to do. So for us, it was support artists, inspire audiences, and contribute to the city. And you realize that those may be realized differently for right now, but that it's still, that's still what has to drive your decisions and what you do. And I would say have your ears open and look for advice from everybody. We have gotten words of wisdom from unexpected places, and just always, be present. I think now is a time to be present with your community and be listening.
Right. And so we're going to be wrapping up in a second. I just want you to give a chance to people to let anything that Flux is doing right now that people should be aware of, or just check out from Flux.
We have a Power to Give, which you can, if you go to powertogive.org and look for Flux Projects, it's a matching grant. The mayor will, and so this Office of Cultural Affairs, small gifts to organizations right now are so important. They're important always, but arts organizations can leverage a multitude of small gifts towards a larger gift from a foundation or a granting organization. Larger funders absolutely look at how engaged our local community is with our work and with our mission. Check out the virtual art series. You can find them all on our website. Subscribe to our email or follow us on social, and you can get those directly to your inbox or feed. And look on Juneteenth for programming with Charmaine. Today, actually, in association with Charmaine's project, we have Tony Blackman leading a global cipher with Black women from across the globe at 2 o'clock, and that'll be live. You can catch it either by registering, or it's actually going to be live on our Facebook page as well.
Okay.
So I would say, like, times are changing very quickly right now. That's what we have laid out today. Check back in a couple of weeks, and there will probably be more on the horizon.
Okay. And thank you so much, Anne. And I got to ask one last thing. Can you let people know, again, what the website is or how to get in contact with Flux Projects?
King, you stopped for me.
Oh, no. I see you fine. No, what happened? Hold on. All right.
So our website is fluxprojects.org. My personal email is Anne, that's ANNE, @fluxprojects.org. And we welcome input at all times. Send us questions. If you're an artist, send us a proposal. We are always interested in hearing from you. And we look forward to a time when we see you again in public space.
All right. Thank you once again, Anne. You guys, please check out Flux Projects. I am sorry for the connection going out the way it is. And once again, tune in to COVID Conversations. Thank you so much, Anne.
King, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Once again.
Bye.
All right, later.